if you're working something and you don't have a tail to use as a long tail, you would do a knitted cast on. For instance, if you're knitting a mitten and you have to create the stitches for the thumb, and I won't go into that now, you would have to knit cast on backwards, as it were. So the next cast on that we do would show you how to do that, and you would use it for many other projects, not just casting on in the middle of a piece of work. So if we discard that one for the moment, in fact I want to snip it, I don't like cutting long. Alright, so this one does not use a long tail. This is called a knitted cast on. In fact, I'm going to show you a cable cast on because I think it looks nicer than the knitted. So I'm going to show you the cable first and then the knitted. Once again, leave yourself about 6 inches, make your slip stitch, and you see I'm doing it by just wrapping the yarn over my finger and then pulling a slip through. Put your needle in, pull it up. Now this time the needle's going to be in my left hand, and I'm going to use 2 needles. Remember, with that one I used my left thumb as my second needle. And I think for showing children how to knit, that's a really, really good method, because they haven't got to manage 2 needles. Anyway, I'll talk more about that later as well. So take up your second needle, again, tuck your tail out of the way in the left hand, just to keep it out of your way. Tension your yarn, put the needle in to your slip stitch, which is going to be your first stitch, yarn around, and this time, instead of taking it off as you would do if you were knitting, you're actually going to give yourself a little bit of room, twist it just slightly. Do you see that very, very slight twist of my right hand? And put the tip of your needle into what looks like the back of the stitch. I'll show you that again, and I'll talk about what I've just done there afterwards. So I've put the yarn around the needle, pull through what you're going to need for the stitch, twist it slightly. You could do it just by twisting your left needle, but I was shown to twist my right wrist to bring it on and give it the correct mount. Now you'll notice when I bring the needle from that stitch, I immediately put it back in, and I put it back in between both mounts. Can you see that? I've got both legs. Both legs of the stitch are there. My needle is between 2 stitches completely, not in one leg as if I were going to knit. So I put it back in between the 2, knit the stitch, and twist it to put it onto the tip of your needle. Behind both legs, between both stitches, yarn round, bring it through, and twist it to put it onto your needle. I wonder what happens if you forget to twist that. Let me just try it. It gets muddled up and it'll make an ugly stitch. You could probably get away with it, but I don't think it'll be such an attractive edge. So it's not the end of the world if you forget to do it. So between both of those, behind both legs, yarn around the needle, pull it through, twist slightly to put it on. I wish I could find a similar example in other things that we do, not in knitting, just in anything that I could liken it to for you, but just at this moment I can't. And you see what I'm doing with my right hand here. Once I've put the new stitch on, I immediately put the needle in, and then I tension it to draw it up, and the needle being in there is going to gauge it for me. I can't make it any tighter than that. It's possible to make it looser by not pulling it up, but if you pull it up fully, then you'll have a good even cast on. And this is the cast on that you could use for many things, many projects.
Can you make the stitches too tight then?
Oh yes. Yes, you can, by pulling it up too tightly. You don't want to do that. Keep your hands relaxed and just tension it as far as it needs to go. You see, that's not tight. All I've done, I can still loosen that. I haven't pulled it up so tightly that I can't loosen if I need to.
It's just taking up the slack.
That's it. Yes, thank you. Take up the slack. Right, so when you get to the last one, I think we've probably got enough on there to show you what I want to show you. Don't take your needle out as I just did. You'll put it into your first stitch, but this time it actually goes in one leg. This is the first stitch you're going to knit, so you put it in the front leg, yarn around, and this time you take the stitch off because you've knitted it. There, now we've got the normal knit. And this time, you see, we're going to have the corded edge on this side. You see those stitches are mounted beautifully. You've got the front leg here, back leg there. And you can probably see why it's called a cable cast on. You can probably see the cable forming.
Yes, I can. So you do that because it's a decorative edge?
No, not because it's decorative. It's always been important to me to have a nice edge. There are other forms of casting on, and I think they're messy. Even someone said to me the other day, I haven't seen that kind of casting on before, because it tends to be taken for granted when we learn as children. It tends to be taken for granted because we're children. We're not going to be able to manage to do things, so we learn it one way and then have to learn how to do it another. And you know, David, you and I don't believe in doing that. And neither did my parents. Children have tremendous abilities, and if they're given the opportunity to use them, I think a lot of parents would be amazed at what their children can achieve. Right, so there is the right side, as we'll call it. Isn't that a lovely cabled edge? Firm.
Yes. Yep, very attractive.
And then the pearl is very uniform. Right, let me just quickly purl a row. So I'm going to slip the first stitch knitwise, that's what we call it. If it's knitwise, the yarn is at the back and you're going into the front leg. Yarn forward, ready to purl the stitches. A lot of people don't like purling. A lot of people are intimidated by it. It's actually a very easy stitch. It slips off the needle really easily. And I'm exaggerating the movements with my right hand because I want you to see what I'm doing. If I'm knitting normally, then you'd see very little movement of my right. Right, last stitch, so take the yarn to the back and knit the last stitch. And then when you slip that stitch the next time, there's a little bit of gapiness there, that will disappear. So there's that lovely cabled edge. Right, so what I want to show you now is the other form of the knitted cast on. So very similar to this, but instead of going between the needles, behind both mounts, both legs, sorry, I'm going to show you the other version.